in Phnom Penh. Is it
Yes,
is it
it
raining?
is.
Yeah. Is it
Yeah.
raining a lot this year?
I think so. Quite a good
Okay.
amount of rain. Yeah.
Good. Yeah. All right. I think we waited for 5 minutes, so
I think we can start.
sure.
We only have several people left. Okay. Hello,
Sure.
everyone.
Hello, Bong.
Yeah. Yeah. Welcome to our online session 4. It's moving forward quite fast now. I can just realize we are now midway, for our online sessions, and so far so good. And I would also like to express appreciation for our trainer. I think we learned a lot from them so far, and we look forward to more sessions, in the coming month, especially in the in-person 3-day training in a month's time. Uh, yeah, and today we are very pleased to meet Dr. DB Subedi. I think it's the first time for everyone to meet him. And Dr. DB Subedi, actually, he is the one that I have been working on. He's the mastermind in putting all of this, together to make it happen. So I have been working with Dr. DB from the very beginning. And he's the one who also drafted the joint proposal, and he also visit Cambodia for another project. But I got the chance to invite Dr. DB Subedi to CDI and to discuss about our joint proposal to apply, for this program. And yeah, I would like to take this opportunity not only to introduce Dr. DB to everyone, but also to express my thanks and gratitude for this effort, to work very hard and to, ensure that we are able to apply for it and to make it happen. And I would also like Dr. DB to introduce himself a little bit, to everyone instead of me saying all the good thing about him. But he may also, because he's the one who put up all this project idea, training idea. So I think it is best now for you to hear directly from him about himself and also about the program a little bit, maybe, before we move on to the section 4 on much method research. And this topic I find very interesting, given the diversity and given the multidisciplinary research and also cross-sector that we all now have to deal with one single discipline. I don't think it's enough for us, to catch up with what's going on. So I think this much method research is very very important and highly relevant to our daily life. Okay. I would like to hand the floor to the DB.
Thank you, Kim-san, and hello and good morning to everyone. And thanks, Kim-san, for a generous introductions about me. I'll try to be brief to introduce myself a little bit more about my own work that I've been doing in South and Southeast Asian region. So you all know my name is DB Subedi. I'm a lecturer in the School of Political Science and International Studies at University of Queensland. I come from political science and peace and conflict studies background. So my work mostly, in the region focus on how we can actually engage with different kinds of actors in society to address the differences, to build social cohesion, and how we can work together to build a better future. So it's more about working towards peace, social cohesion, and a shared future for our societies across Asia. My work has, in terms of field work, it's mostly concentrates on few countries in South and Southeast Asia. This includes Sri Lanka and Nepal. These are the two countries where I have done extensive field work in the past. And I'm currently also working on a project which kind of more or less has similar elements to this kind of research training in Myanmar, where I work with my two other amazing colleagues, Nicole, who already you have met in previous sessions, Mel Johnson, and Moan is actually supporting us in that project as well, where we work with civil society actors to build their capacities for democracy and social change in Myanmar. But as part of that project, we have a very substantial, solid research and capacity building element, because we have been providing training to civil society, especially 26 women researchers. All our research participants and the people we engage with in our Myanmar projects are women. Wonderful, amazing women researchers, not just from Yangon, but from different parts of the country. So I have, in addition to working on social change, peace, and social cohesion, I also have interest in civil society capacity building and capacity building of different actors, because originally I come from a practitioner's background. Before becoming an academic, I was a practitioner working in Vietnam, Sri Lanka, and Nepal with different international organizations, and UNDP, especially in Vietnam, where I worked with building Vietnamese youth's capacity and infrastructure for volunteering for social change and development in Vietnam. So I bring that bit of a field-based experience like most of you here have been doing. So I also keen to focus on how we can bridge theories with practice, so what we call it theory-praxis interface in academia. And I think this training is an amazing example of how we can bring these theoretical perspectives and inform not just research, but also knowledge generations, policy formulations, and implementations on the ground. I came to know about CDRI when Netra visited our university a couple of months before, actually earlier this year. And then I visited CDRI and then met Bong Lina, Michael, and other colleagues from Australia Award. And we started to think about this idea of providing research training for Australia Award alumni with my amazing colleagues, Nicole, who is another mastermind behind this program, and Kirill, and with support from Muani. So we have a team to deliver this, and I'm very happy to see that the idea we started a few months before has come to this stage. For some unavoidable reason, I missed the first 3 sessions, but I was always thinking of this, and I was pleased to hear from Kirill, Nicole, that it's been going so well. Okay, I stop there, and I look forward to meeting you all in person in our in-person training in Phnom Penh. And until then, we have a few more sessions to go. I think we have another 4 or 5 sessions to go, and I look forward to interacting with you, build your foundational skill, advanced skill, and apply that into your projects through these online sessions, but also in-person training in Phnom Penh. Thank you again to Kim San, CDRI, Australia Award colleagues, and to all the participants. I stop there, and then let's talk about today's sessions. Okay, I think to start with that, because Kirill facilitated the last session, so I would like to invite Kirill to start with a bit of a recap, and then we go from there. Would that be okay, Kirill?
Yeah, that's great, DB. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Great, thanks, Ron. Hello, everyone. Kim-san, is there anything else that we need to talk on before we get into the meat of the subject?
No, nothing else. I think you can, yeah.
Good. Okay, good. I'm assuming that everyone can access the folder. So this week in the folder, we had one book chapter that talked on mixed methodologies and also gave you a good template, gives you an example of what to use when applying mixed methods. And we'll talk a bit more on what mixed methods are in a second. And the PowerPoint slides are up there as well. So DB and I are using different PowerPoints. We'll sort of swap between the two of them. But the overall session today is to talk on something that I think, Lena, you signaled last week. You signaled, Lena, last week when I was talking on literature reviews. You said, but Kirill, I'm not sitting at a desk, or I'm doing something other than sitting at a desk and reading books all the time, unlike you. How do I do my research? What is it that I need to do that differs? And what's important about a literature review in the sort of work that I do when I'm on the ground, I'm a practitioner, I'm doing a different type of research to the one you're proposing. So today what we're talking about is the blending of these two types of methodologies. We're talking about qualitative and quantitative. We're talking about how you mix the two. And Kim-san said we're going to get into the interesting stuff where we start to look at probably the more nuanced approaches to research. And this is where I think it has more application to you guys, given that I've read your research proposals and your research questions. So here, I think we can start to build ideas around how you go about your particular research and the methods you're going to apply. But before we get there, just for those who don't know anything about quants versus quals, and I think all of you have some understanding of it, given that you've all done degrees elsewhere, but I'm just going to give a very brief and broad overview on the differences between the two. Then DB will go in and look at the design of each. Well, I'll look at one design, you're going to look at quantitative design, and then we're going to talk on how the blending of these two works. So last week when I talked on the literature review, it can be a standalone piece of information that tells you what other people are doing within your own field of study. It gives you some understanding of who those people are and how they place themselves. And as I said, it also gives you a good understanding of where you place yourself within that literature. So that's also crucial. But, you know, that could be one part of it. So we'll talk on how you take that and use it as a methodology that you then place against a quants methodology, and you mix the two together. And that gives you, I think it has more applicability given your research topics ranging from pedagogy to agronomy and so on. So with that in mind, let me give this very brief and broad overview just to situate it, and then we'll go from there. And Moani, I'm just going to bring up my slides. So let me know if this doesn't work.
Yeah. Can you zoom in full screen?
Did that work, Moani?
Yeah, perfect.
Great, thank you. And at any point, if anyone has a question, please just raise your hand or just yell out, because I can't see everyone now, the slides are up. So the title for this week is Working with Mixed Methods, Quantitative and Qualitative Approaches. No doubt you're aware and have applied some of these approaches in the past. So let me just give this overview, as I said. Here's the outline of the session. First, I'm just going to very briefly talk on quantitative research methods and what they tell us. And I have to admit that I'm not a quants person. DB has more experience in quants. I am a literary, my background is in cultural studies and literary studies, so I very much just sit and read books and analyze what these books say, according to what I think they say. So I'm more a quals person. My research background is in quals. So, and I'll talk a little bit more on the design of these in relation to this mixed method approach, but I'll just give a background on what these are and what they tell us. Then the question is, well, are these two different approaches as different as we might imagine? And once upon a time, and even today, there is this school that thinks that there's no blending. You're either a quants person or you're a quals person. And as I said then, I'm pretty much a quals person because I'm very bad with numbers, I suppose. It's not been my forte, numbers. And I know that's a rudimentary approach to quals, and I do understand it. But I did mention that I ran a journal. I think in the introductory session I talked on it just briefly, and then we get papers there that are quants heavy, and I cannot for the life of me work out what they're saying or how they go about approach it because of all the different formulas they use and the different approaches. So I have to have an rudimentary understanding of it, but they're not that different. In fact, DB will talk on the blending of these two things, and then from there we'll start to conceive of ideas and approaches that you can take where you blend the two. So then we work our way into this idea of qualitative design and quantitative design, and it leads us then to the application of this to your own research question, which is from research problem to question, and then to the methods we're going to approach, with a few examples in amongst all this to give you an idea. And from here on in, take note that we're starting to get more nuanced. As we move forward, we're going to get more nuanced and talk more on the specificities of this and of some of the complications involved. So we've given a background, we've given a big, broad overview, and now we're going to get more specific. And what we're hoping as participants is, as we become more specific, you might talk on your own research topics and say, no, this is the approach I'd like to take. What do you think about this? And how does it fit within what you've been talking about? So happy for you guys to join the discussion at any point. Okay, so very basically, and this, as I said, you'll be aware of, but for those who aren't aware of or need a bit of a recap, this is quants research. In essence, very basically, it's the exploration through numeric patterns in data and elsewhere. So statistics, for example, you see charts, you do different types of charts. And I've given some examples of where quants is used. So we can use it to assess things like statistical measures or statistical frequency, such as the average income per capita or per household. That gives us, that's a quants approach to learning something about society. And we also, for example, there's a fish picture up here, if you can see it behind the Zoom screen, that gives you a random sample of fish sizes or size, and from that you can come up with some quantitative, some numbers to tell you something about what's going on with the fish in a particular dam, sea, so on and so forth. So it's a statistical measure to give you some idea of the frequency of things, and then you can deduce from that some observations, and it gives you a sort of this is the data that you're drawing on to substantiate your claims. We can also use it to assess, for example, how much people value something, which is a bit different to the more pragmatic ones. So if you've ever done a survey online, they'll use a certain type of statistical approach, and there are a number of different types of approaches to this. For example, on a scale of 1 to 5, how much did you like this course? And that will then give us, as researchers, an idea of what you enjoyed, how invested in it you were, and how to shape things differently the next time around. So it's a value. It gives us a value. And there is some interpretation around that. So we can also look at how we value your own values. So it's not as cut and not as suppose as binary. It's just saying this is the results, but we can read into that. So we can start to assess, well, why is it these people have rated it this particular way? But it gives us a value. It also gives us correlations between different data sets and how variables relate to each other. So for example, here's the example is that do countries with low rates of GDP record lowest public spending in public health, for example? And you guys in public health have probably come across these sort of statistics a lot in the past. How does your country compare to others? Can we correlate what's going on in our country with other countries? Even within country, you can look at certain vaccination rates and things like that. To look at where vaccines are being taken up within city versus country and so on and so forth. So it's really, if in public health and elsewhere, it's of benefit and is used extensively there. And then related to this, quantitative research also gives us comparisons. And the example is how many mosquitoes are caught in a trap in coastal dwellings compared to the forest, and that gives us some data. So it ends up looking a bit like this, and you will have seen, this is very basic, of course, you will have seen something that looks a bit like this. So it gives us data, the population data here in the Solomon Islands compared to the population data for Australia. And from you can look at, in terms of public health, you can compare why there are fewer people older in the Solomon Islands than there are in Australia, for example. And that gives you an idea. And from there, that leads to certain questions, to research questions, and it leads to other studies. So you can look at, for example, the rate of what they call it, baby boomers. So why are the baby boomers different in this particular part of the world compared to the other part of the world, and so on. So methods of data, they focus on what is observable. So when it comes to quals, and I'll talk a bit on this in a second, when I'm researching from a literary perspective, it's my interpretation of a text. I give you an opinion that I think is embedded in the text, even if it's not there. So the author may say, no, I didn't write that, Kirill. But here what we're looking at is observable statistics, charts, and so on and so forth. And the question is, well, is that more objective? Unlike, my own opinion about how a book should be read. And is there a scope for interpretation when we use statistics? And of course, there is a yes to that. But there's also something a little bit more grounded in quals than over quals, maybe. Less interpretive, maybe, I don't know, or less maybe open to bias, I'm not quite sure. And it also depends on how you approach quants, how much detail you want to include within your quant survey. It also depends as well. Quant research methods also utilize a range of different types of number gathering, surveys, they use structured interviews, measurements, observations, and we'll talk a little bit on that in a second. Analysis of documented numerical quantifiable information. Sometimes you can, for example, do a control F on a book and come up with a number of times a certain word is used, and that gives you something literary but quantifiable as well. And then you present these findings as numeric values, percentages, correlations, graphs, and so on, as exampled here. So one of the benefits of this particular approach, well, you get the data and it's easily presented. So you can see, comparisons very quickly, and they're graphic. So great for a reader. Very good at providing a quick overview of a particular phenomenon, but also it indicates some seriousness of a phenomenon. So it doesn't have to be doesn't have to be superficial. In fact, there's a lot of depth to these as well. Quants gives you a breadth of information across a range of settings, cases, or sites that's maybe not so measurable when you're looking at qualitative analysis. So you can look at a whole lot of different settings and case studies and sites within one particular study. It gives you that ability. And then helps us to correlate this broader range of statistics. But some would say maybe there's less in-depth information gathered. And then the question from that would be, well, maybe that's the case, and what are the stories that lie beneath this particular statistics? DB talked on some of his experience. We were working as an example, working with an NGO in Cox's Bazar that was focusing on hate speech within a particular community, the Rohingya community. They were victims of it. And they came up with a whole lot of statistics, but the statistics were very cold as one thing. The stories about how you went and gathered that particular type of statistics and the difficulties involved in that gave us a whole lot of different study. And they're the stories that lie beneath the statistics. Yeah, we got the statistics, but they were skewed and there was something wrong with them. And then we started to look at why that is and what was the story behind it. So there are stories that lie behind the statistics that can be explored. Very broadly and briefly, well, what's the difference between that and quals, as I abbreviate it, qualitative research? Well, this is an interpretation, and the others are as well, but this is interpretive analysis focused on the meanings that we take from experiences and phenomena. So when I look at a book, I say this book tells me this about the world, and that's my interpretation of a particular meaning. So I've analyzed it in a particular way. I haven't used stats in any way. I haven't tried to draw up any data, any graphs. I've just interpreted according to what standing that I want to take on this particular issue. So it allows us to understand problems, perceptions, or belief from the position of those who experience them or those who hold it. So what we do is we place ourselves in the shoes of people sometimes to get an understanding of what these people have experienced. For example, why do some people earn less in paid employment than other people? So we can start to put ourselves in the shoes of those and examine life factors to understand why that is. And they might also, as I said before, tell us something different to what those statistics tell us. So if you place yourself in the shoes of someone who's taking a survey, you get a very different interpretation of that person than what the survey will tell us. And also, it could tell us why some people value some experiences more than others. Stats may not tell us that. So it's a little bit more personal, I suppose, a little bit more subjective, but it gives us a little, like when we're talking about the value of individuals and maybe it becomes a bit more individualistic. So maybe it's also a bit more of a personal approach to studying. What do they look like, quals? Well, they look in very different things. They could involve, for example, you could take focus groups, for example, and take some qual sort of understandings from that. Unstructured interviews, you've come across a person, you've done some interviewing, and as a result of that, this is a quals research. You record life histories as well, series of different life histories, and give some feedback on that. Discourse analysis or literary analysis of what I was talking about is key in quals research methods. Photo elicitation, which is what Nicole will come and talk on next week or the week after, I think, and talk about that as a specific form of qualitative research. And then also things like ethnographic observation. So just to sum up, this is what some people call thick description, a way of understanding a worldview of research participants. So when we're thinking about this mixed methodology, think about the way, how do we blend these two seemingly disparate approaches? How do we take the statistics that seems kind of dry and blend it with the personal? And how do we get that blending and that molding? And this is what the point of today's session is, blending the two, mixing the two methods, and how do we approach it? And as DB signaled and as Kim Sun signaled, this is probably the best approach to some of your projects. Take one, take the other, blend the two. So with that big, broad overview, I'll stop and hand it over to DB, and then I'll join you in a little while to talk on some of the design methods.
Okay. Thanks, Kirill. Actually, you already made my job in the remaining sessions easier because you laid the ground so clearly, to talk about qual, quant, and mixed method. Let me just so the slides I'm using another set of slides, but which really complements and corresponds with what Kirill just talked about. Can everyone see this slide?
Yeah. Can you make a
okay.
TV?
Full screen. Good.
Yeah.
Right. So hello again, everyone. So what I'm going to do in the next 30 minutes or so, and then we go for sort of a group work, is to build on what Kirill just talked about. Okay. As you can see, the main focus of today's sessions is on working with mixed methods. So we are sort of trying to bring this qualitative and quantitative approaches to research together and reflect on that. And in doing so, actually, I would like to start with noting three things. Okay. I think these three things are important for us to start with when we start thinking about your research method. The first one is what I would call is, the significance of how we use the language in a research project, particularly in regard to everything about the data you collect, the data you process and analyze. So the language I'm referring here is, oftentimes what we hear from people, even working, whether that's in action research, that is particularly focused on learning kind of, insights and, offering some practical policy recommendations and things like that, or whether that's a purely theoretical research project. People often tend to think about their data and the source of information just in terms of method, okay? And we often call it like qualitative method, quantitative method. What I'm trying to clarify here is that there's another use of language. Then another step that we need to think when it comes to collecting and analyzing data, and this is what we call research design. Okay, so I just want to ask everyone how much you are familiar with these two different set of languages. and what do they entail in practical terms? I can't see the chat box, but perhaps Moani can help me with that. Can someone very quickly write down in chat box whether you are familiar with this distinction between research design and research method? Let's start from there. Would that be okay with everyone? All right, let's use just 2 minutes to reflect on those two different sort of words or language we use, okay? Research design and research method. Is there any response in the chat box?
Not yet, TB. Yeah.
Okay, I will. If people are okay to do that, I can wait another 30 seconds or 1 minute. That's helpful. Okay.
So we got 2 comments here.
Good.
Research from Donglina. Research design is the overall structure of the research.
Yeah.
And Rutavati said research design is more about the overall design, while method is more on the data collection and analysis.
Absolutely.
And one more feedback from Malis as well. To me, research design is a big picture of the research, while method is a subset under a research body.
Oh, that's very well said. Actually, this is absolutely a good point. All right, there's more comments coming in.
Just a couple more. Okay. From Bun, I think research methods refer to the way we select either quality meets research design, refer to how we organize or integrate those data set from above methods. And Sighak said, for me, I understand research design as the full overall structure of how the research will be conducted, while research method narrows down to the specific tools used for the research collection. For the data collection, perhaps research method is a part of research design. And last but not least, for them, research design is the overall plan, while research method is the specific technique or tool used in the research. Thanks, everyone.
Wow. Amazing. Yeah, good. Thank you everyone for your comment. And this is exactly what I was actually going to talk. So now I can see that you already know the distinctions between design and methodology. And I ask these questions because, as I said earlier, oftentimes when we think of how we collect data, we tend to only think in terms of a particular set of methodology. And the value, the significance of thinking a broader research design is it actually helps you to situate your research within a particular underlying philosophy of inquiry, because every research, what we are trying to do is we are trying to actually uncover the reality, generate new knowledge, or find out new insights and new reality. So we are trying to be as closer as possible to the reality. So in doing that, methodology is just a part of that. So I often explain this to students in a bit metaphorical way, by saying, say, for example, you could think of a research design as a architectural design of a building. If you are going to build a house, then what you have in the first place is an architectural design. It's not just has a architectural design, not just has a a graphic representation of a pillar, what it should like and how big it should be. It also has all the informations about it, So research design actually gives you a philosophical justifications and philosophical orientation of your project. So qualitative and quantitative method is just just a way of achieving that philosophical goal that you want to achieve in a research. So why we need to really care about design rather than method? Because, for example, in this course, you started with a research question, then you started talking about collecting literature review, and then the next stage, you are thinking of collecting data. So by thinking of a research design of your project, you are actually trying to link your research problem where you started from, and then your research questions, literature review, and then the process of collecting new information, data for analysis. So in a way, thinking of research design also helps you to connect different elements of the research that we are unpacking in this through these trainings. Generally speaking, there are 3 types of research designs that we talk about. And these 3 types are qualitative, quantitative, and mixed methods. But I must also tell you, now there are different kinds of creative research designs that have emerged, especially in the field of practice. Creative research designs, for example, there's also a bit of debate, what is a creative research design? Some people think that collecting data, for example, by using images, pictures, and by different non-traditional means for interpretive kind of explorative research, for some it's considered as kind of more innovative research design. Others think that could actually simply fit into these existing 3 different designs: qualitative, quantitative, and mixed method research designs. Is there any question? Do people have any questions or any points for clarity?
No comments here. All good.
Okay, good. The other thing I would like people to reflect on when you actually think of your research design is what kind of explorations or what kind of research focus you are going to have. For example, is the purpose of your research is purely explorative, or you want to explore some data and then interpret it, or if it is more like integrated sort of holistic inquiry that you want to find, collect some data and interpret those data through interviews and other kinds of informations. In talking about a bit of in philosophical terms, in the literature you find these 2 different trends, often explained in as positivist trend and post-positivist trend. I don't want to go in detail about that. Positivist trends is more about working with quantitative data, quantitative informations, and quantitative research design. And post-positivist approaches and techniques have different approaches. For example, critical research method, interpretive. We can actually think of or discuss this in our in-person training, but I just want you to be clear or be familiar with those different vocabularies and different concepts we use in this while talking about research design. I don't want to go in detail about quantitative research design, but I want, before I talk about quantitative research design, the second point I earlier mentioned about, and I want to clarify this, is a myth about at least 2 different types of research design. Okay, do people think that? And before I come to the myth, I want to pose these questions to people and want to see what you guys think. The question is qualitative doing or working with qualitative research design easier than working with quantitative research design? Because oftentimes there is this perception that doing quantitative research design is more difficult than doing a qualitative research design. And we often come up with this preconceived kind of ideas and assumptions and myth about those two different research design. Okay, I want to hear from people. What do you think? Is doing quantitative more difficult, or is put it differently, is doing qualitative research easier? What people think? I want to see your views in the chat box, please. Let's use another 2 minutes to reflect on that. And if you have any view on that, you can also share why do you think that's the case. And I'm asking these questions because these kind of preconceptions or assumptions or myth has fundamental impacts and implications for how people end up choosing the research methodology. So what, Kirill, I'm trying to do today is basically, rather than just working with one particular type of research design, we want you to be clear about which research design suits to your project and why. That's our single most goal that we want to achieve by end of these sessions. Okay.
So we received 2 responses so far.
Yeah.
Rover3 said, I think it depends on people interest and existing skills.
Yeah.
And Sinit said, I think it depends on our experience in research design.
Good. Yeah, that's a very acceptable response. Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah,
depends
and
on
opinion from Boone said, I think it depends on the fields. And then Malis and Randa follows. They said, I think quantitative is more challenging in terms of data collection from the fact that it more time intensive and require more critical think on the data analysis compared to quantitative, which is more direct, like 1 + 2 = 1 + 1 = 2. And Radha said, I was taught that qualitative has more value than quantitative, especially in the field of mental health. And Emily said, quantitative design takes a bit more time to design data collection in systematic way, but somehow can be easily to analyze. Qualitative, on the other hand, might be easy to gather, but can be challenging in interpreting the data. And Mo says, I think it depends on the availability and accessibility of the data, researcher skill, and interests and objectives of the research. And just 2 more. Marong said, I think qualitative design is more difficult than quantitative. And Sommi
the
said,
other way around. Yeah.
Yeah, to my personal view, it depends on the personal strength as well. I am a qualitative person. I found out doing qual is easier for me because I don't need to involve a lot with number, but I still need to build both skills because both methods needs to use for different benefits. And last but not least, Keith said, I think qualitative method faces challenges with accuracy and standardization in large models, while qualitative methods struggles with generalized by time-intensive data collection.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much again, everyone. Look, this is very interesting. What you said here, I 100% agree with most of what you have said. But without going by each response, some of the reflections here also actually reflects these myth and assumptions about research design. For example, qualitative data sets requires more nuanced skill set than quantitative analyzing or doing quantitative research design. In a way, that can also be contested, because in my view, both quantitative and qualitative methods actually require a specific set of skills and a specific set of expertise. So there's a basic level of expertise is necessary on both sides. I absolutely agree with what everyone said about that either qualitative or quantitative research design is truly guided by or derived from the phenomena is under study. Okay. when I work as a you know, in the field of action research, kind of work I do with NGOs and non-government organizations, or sometimes even UN agencies, or even when I'm doing evaluation of projects, one of the questions that often comes forefront is about research methodology. You know, when we design the kind of action research project, and I'm telling you why that becomes sometimes subject for intensive discussion is because depending on which research methodology you want to choose, there are cost implications, time implications, right? Doing kind of, you know, small surveys based on open source data sometimes can be done easily. You know, it's not very cost effective, cost intensive. But if you want to really do a large scale study, for example, if you want to do a nationwide study on to what extent, you know, interventions in neonatal and maternal health has improved people's health behavior and health outcomes, then you would need to design a large scale survey, collect data, and that can be really challenging in terms of time and resources. So yes, of course, the research questions and you know, the research objective, and then the question you are asking in your research will lead to that, and of course interest also is an important. But please keep in mind that both, if you are not used to, you know, or if you do not have good justifications and some basic level of expertise, both methods can be equally challenging. That's the summary I want to draw on. Just to add to what Kirill already talked about, quantitative research design, basically, when we're talking about quantitative research design, you would be thinking either in terms of survey, you know, asking people different kinds of questions, or, you know, you can also collect quantitative data from open source database. Okay, for example, you can see, you know, how much you know, freedom of religion is, how much countries actually give freedom to you know, practice religion and religious expressions. You can find this data in you know, religious freedom data sets, which is a global data set. I'm just giving you an example. World Bank designs and publishes data sets on development issues in different countries, but also at a you know, at world scale. Oxfam International is an organization which actually has a data set. I don't think that's entire data set is available online, but you can find the data sets which actually analyzes inequalities both at national level and international level on an annual basis. There are also international database which talks about how much countries actually spend on military. So the database open source, this is an open source database. So when you're thinking about collecting data in quantitative method, you can sometimes, you don't need to really have your own survey, but you can also draw on open source data that is available. And governments also you know, produces open source data. So that's one way to look at it if you want to, if you really want to have some you know, easily and instantly accessible and available data for quantitative study. Talking about analysis, and I want to leave this analysis especially for the in-person training, but I just want to touch on two things. One is, generally speaking, you know, as a practitioners, as a development practitioners, or, you know, other kinds of practitioners in the field, oftentimes we tend to use descriptive data analysis by looking at what the numbers tell us, for example, the numbers that emerge from survey, you know. So descriptive data is, you would end up saying like, okay, this, you know, for example, if the question is, what is the school dropout rates of girls, you know, high school dropout rates of girls in so and so provinces, and you have a survey, the data comes in front of you, so you you may actually come up with a mean figure. Okay, in this province, this is the mean or mediation number. This is the most mean average of dropouts in other provinces, and sometimes you can present that in a table and make a comparison. So this is a kind of descriptive analysis, but this descriptive analysis is most common, and I think with the basic kind of skill sets, if you are able to read the numbers and then just play with the numbers and find out count like simple mean, mode, and mediations, you can come up with kind of an analysis. What is sometimes more challenging, and in your comments some people were referring to the challenging aspects of working with quantitative data, is the inferential analysis. The inferential analysis needs a particular set of and I would say sophisticated set of skills and knowledge about, for example, statistical methods. For example, doing a correlation test, chi-square test, t-square test, regression analysis. I don't think we can go in detail about these methods in these sessions, and I'm also not sure how much you really want to do in your project that you have in mind, but just I want to tell you that if you want to reuse quantitative methods, you might like to think about descriptive analysis rather than doing a very kind of a sophisticated inferential analysis in your study. Talking about benefits and limitations, Kirill has already talked about this, so I don't want to go in detail about that. But what I would say is that it has both benefits and limitations. And some of the limitations is that sometimes data can oversimplify the phenomena, complex phenomena. For example, you would say like that 30% of women in a particular province drop out high school at the age of 10 or 20. You can just tell the story, but you can't really explain why these 30%. What is the personal circumstances, social circumstances, familial condition of these 30% girls who do not continue their higher educations? That it's very difficult to explain that kind of personal reflections or personal insights only by means of using quantitative data. So I want to highlight this oversimplification of complex phenomena as one of the key limitations or challenges. And it is for this reason some pragmatists have proposed to combine those two methods and techniques together. And this is where I'm actually going to talk about how we can combine both qualitative and quantitative methods. Again, rather than working with like different analytical tools, what I would like you to be clear in another 1 hour or so is how you can blend those two techniques. Why would you like to blend? Would that be a useful approach to your research or not? And if it is a useful approach, then why and how? What are the at least different approaches or different methods through which you can actually blend quantitative and qualitative approaches or designs, right? So we want you to give some clarity on the processes through which you can combine them, use them simultaneously. Okay, do people have any questions as of now? Let's like 2 minutes pause and see how we're going, or if you have to add something to what we just talked about. Also, as I go, yes, Morgan from CDRI raised hand. Yes, Morgan, go ahead.
Good morning, Professor. So I have a question regarding the research design.
Yeah.
I wonder if when we do our research design, so can we change when we conduct our study?
Oh,
We should
okay.
stick to our design.
Wow, that's wonderful questions. Yes, should we? So your questions is, should we really stick to your research design once it is designed, or you can change it later, right? Yeah?
Sorry, I can't hear you.
Sorry, my question, just I wanted to be sure. Your question is, can we really change our research design once it is designed? Is
Yeah,
that right?
I want to
Okay.
know that can we change our design when we really go into the deep study of our design? As we may know, design is the first stage that we maybe we think about the primary design, but when we go deep down to our study, there might be something changed. So
Yeah. Look, that's a very good question. Does anyone in this group has had an experience where you have designed a research, you developed a research design and you reviewed and revised it later? Let me put this back to the group. I have my response to your question, but I want to hear from people if anyone has very practical experience about it. You can raise your hand or you can also type in a chat box. Yeah, I think there's one comment from Betty. Yeah. It depends on how far along you are in the implementation process. Absolutely. Does anyone have a story to tell about how they actually happen to change the research design? I have a story. I can share a story from my own experience. I did. Okay. So you mean like you changed the research design? Yes. Okay. What was that research about? Can I ask you?
Hi.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just revised my research design just like early this week.
Yeah.
Actually.
Okay.
So
can you tell us a little bit about that?
yeah. So what happened is, so I'm doing a research on socioeconomic incentive for unpaid care work at household level right now. And at first, like the whole design is more on using like a mixed method of qualitative and quantitative. But then, like after doing more like desk review, literature review, and all of that, and talking to friends, I found out that one of the organization is doing a survey on that particular topic and kind of contribute to that already. So I need to remove the quantitative side of my method and focus more on the qualitative and change it to a more like narrative and case study so that it can be more complementary to the existing survey done by the organization.
Excellent example.
So
Yeah.
it's because also like I haven't done the data collection. I haven't kind of designed the survey and all of that. So that's why I'm saying it's depend on how far along you are in the process.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I did revise and it now purely qualitative, focusing on narrative and case study.
Yeah, good point. Thank you so much. It's really helpful. I think there's another comment from Rachana. I experienced changes in research design in legal research. Not entirely, but only part that may contradict with the existing laws and regulations. This is another very interesting, fascinating example. Look, I will tell you, I will share my very short experience, very briefly experience that I had, in terms of revising research design. This was actually for an evaluations back in, I think this was long back actually in 2012, and this was the evaluation of health and sanitations, health and hygiene project, what was called is WAS project. and this was in Nepal. So I was doing an evaluation, I was leading an evaluation for a research project, and we had a very well done. And one of the things about research design, if you are doing for some kind of, action research project or in any other kinds of research project, my advice is you may like to make it as exploratory but also as participatory as possible, right? So this was a evaluation of a project where an NGO in partnership with a local NGO actually had a plan to build 500 toilets for 500 households to improve health and sanitation of families, but also that community. The model of the project was such that it had to be like 80-20 model. So the donor and the NGO would bring 80% of the toilet, which is the foundations and but the walls and roof would have to be completed by individual households. So which would be around 20% of the cost. And the project was completed, beautiful report, and we were in the field, and then what we thought is maybe just doing a survey, a quick survey of quantitative survey of how much has been completed and what has been the health impact and outcomes through survey would be a good idea. And then it was only based on quantitative research design in that sense. But when we actually started doing the field work, what we realized is that a significant number of households actually could not build the remaining 20% of the toilet, which was not revealed. It was not at any cost. It was not going to be revealed by doing quantitative survey. So we had to redesign, rejig the whole thing and include a qualitative design to talk to the household leaders and people and ask them why, what happened, what went with you all there. You get my point? So that's where at that stage. So I absolutely agree with this point about where you are. Sometimes even if you have started collecting data, you are in the field and you realize that it's not going to fly. It's not going to work. So there's no harm to go back and revisit the entire philosophical underpinning of your research. Even it's not just about research design. Sometimes changing your research design may need you to go back and revisit your research questions as well, right? Because in the Myanmar project, Moani can probably tell even more about that because he's interacting with women researchers very frequently. We started with a different kind of approach to doing, the impact of conflict on gender roles in Myanmar. We started with a completely different kinds of understanding, and after having like different rounds of consultations with women researchers, we changed our modality, right? So that's a very good example. So your research design is not set in stone. That's the message here. And to emphasize that point, I just want you to pay attention to the second, the box, the middle box here, your mixed method. Of course, any research design should be guided by pragmatism, but more so a mixed method research design should be guided by pragmatism. And a pragmatism is it's a flexible, practical worldviews or a way of generating knowledge that supports flexible methods of collecting data. And when I say flexible methods, it can be quantitative, it can be qualitative, and you need to consider these methods as part of the research design, depending on what questions you want to address and in what context. So the research problem, research questions, and research context. Feasibility, accessibility, everything. These three big things are always very central to the pragmatist approach of doing a research design. And for that reason, I want you to focus on quantitative and collective research design, quantitative and qualitative research design. So let's talk about strategies. Okay, what are the different ways or strategies through which we can actually go about developing a mixed method research design strategy. Now, again, I would like to invite people to share your experience, how you have gone about doing this. If you, I'm sure you have done both qualitative, immersed qualitative and quantitative methods into your mixed method research design. So what was this? How did you approach it, and how did it work out? I want to hear people's view on that. It would be really useful if someone, if you have, share your own project, or if you have any thinking around your new project that you want to do it. So in what way you want to merge those two different methods together? Because that's merging the strategy to merge qualitative and quantitative is very, very central here. And you have to have a clearer understanding about how you are going to do this. Okay, let's hear from people. What if you have done this before? Okay, hang on.
DB, Meng Li, I think, is here, who's an academic who's had some experience in this in the past. Because I think, Meng Li, you've talked on this already and some of the difficulties in getting published. Are you there, Meng Li?
Yes, I am. And if you don't mind, can I please ask you to simplify the question again, please?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Look, my question is, if you have used mixed method approach in your research, I'm sure you would have then use both qualitative and quantitative methods, right? How did you use those two methods together? What was the method of using or merging those two different methods together? How did you do it actually? Is that clear?
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah, okay.
I have to be honest to tell you that I have never involved much in both method, because like most of my research is around about it's most likely they are about conceptual framework, so it involve like scrutinizing some existing studies. So I have very little research in mixing the two. But to the best of my knowledge, I think one approach that so far I have used, but it's not part of any research paper, just under coursework, I think we use like qualitative. Sometimes we used to triangulate, I think, like we just oppose whether the quantitative, the correlation, something we found there, whether it yields similar, the same result or not, or they are at least on the same trend or not. I think my knowledge might be limited in this regard. Thank you.
Okay, no, good. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, you actually rightly mentioned about triangulations, which is very common. What I'm trying to clarify on this slide here is, even if, okay, triangulation is in simple terms is a way of comparing and contrasting data that you have collected from different sources. Let's put it that way, in simple words, right? Of course, yeah. In theory, in principle, it sounds plausible. It sounds easy. It sounds good. But my question is, yes, how can we systematically triangulate? And triangulations is often a process that takes place when you have actually collected the data. But here I'm talking about strategy in a broader sense. Even before collecting the data, you should have a clear view of how you are going to collect qualitative and quantitative data, and how you are going to merge them, or how you are going to use them together. Okay. Does anyone have any other experience in that regard? Correct method to triangulate. Yes, that's a good point. I experienced. Okay, let me tell you then. Let's make it simple. Okay. So there are basically in the literature, and you can also find some of these informations in the pre-readings we have shared with you earlier this week. It's also there. But then I'm happy to send a few more papers if you are interested in the working with the mixed methods, because I have heaps of literature to draw on. So, when you have a research design, you have a clarity that you know whether or not you are going to use both quantitative and qualitative method or not, okay? So when the moment you start thinking about using or combining these two methods, then one way of doing that would be what we call it sequential approach. Sequential approach, as the term suggests, is basically you either begin with a quantitative, quantitative approach or quantitative methods. You use both methods, but you basically choose one method to start with. And when I say one method to start with, I'm referring to even to literature review. How you do literature review for qualitative study can be slightly different than or different from how you do qualitative literature review for quantitative studies, for example. Sometimes mixed method approach might need a slightly different nuanced approach to literature review. You can actually find this information in the required pre-reading for this week as well. So the sequential approach of mixed method is that you start either with qualitative and quantitative, start collecting data in one domain, and that data will give you some insights to move to the other domain and think about how you want to integrate or accommodate another source of data collection method. Let me give you an example again, okay? Say, for example, if you are going to study girls' high school dropout trend in certain province, you might want to do some, literature review of what the quantitative data tells about it. It gives you a picture about it. And then once you do this quantitative analysis, then you find some informations where you think that quantitative data is not enough. It doesn't tell people's personal story, experience, lived experience, and so on and so forth. Then you start actually expanding your qualitative research tools. Okay, remember the word I'm using, tools. Tools means the way of data collection. Now then you start drafting your qualitative questions for your qualitative interviews. You want to do that, but your interview questions in this case is basically drawn from the quantitative analysis you started in the first phase. So it's a phase-based approach. It's a sequential approach. You can do both. You can start from qualitative, mini qualitative study, do some interviews, you get some insights from the field, and now you want to test that in a more quantitative manner, and you design your survey later on. So it can go both ways. This is what we call it sequential approach or sequential strategy of mixed method. The second one is it's more like congruent or integrated. So you do together. You actually simultaneously do quantitative survey and then run a sort of a more qualitative interviews at the same time. So it's an integrated, and oftentimes I find this convergent or integrated approach is a common way of doing mixed method research. The third one is called the nested method. And to help elaborate what is a nested method, I have actually two images on the slide. So nested method is primarily you choose one method which is your main method, which is a bigger method. Okay, so for example, you actually want to do qualitative, but you want to quantify certain findings, certain aspects of your finding, or a particular answer you want to address in your research by quantitative. So what you are doing is that you have a bigger qualitative design within that qualitative design, you may have very smaller quantitative elements to that, or vice versa. You can have a quantitative design where you primarily want to do open source quantitative data analysis, or you want to do survey, but then you only want to test or elaborate or explore certain aspects within that in more in-depth, through more in-depth interviews. So this is called a nested method. Is this clear? Do people, does this sound familiar to what you have done, or do people have any questions, or if you want to add something to these three strategies? Or at the same time, if you have come across any other strategies that you have that you are aware of or you have applied, please feel free to share with us. Okay, let's use another 2 minutes to do that.
DB, I don't know, I hope you don't mind me interjecting at this point, and you may talk on this in a second, but I was just going to convey it, like in the study of history, once upon a time in history, in the study of history, it was always about these big empirical studies, and they would tell us a lot about what happened in a particular time, give us sort of statistics as to how many people died or what happened over in terms of all the documentation and the politics and what have you. But then in the late, I don't know, maybe 80s and 90s, particularly within the sort of research field that I work in, they started to ask that question of why. So this is what happened, but why did it happen? And then they came across this, they're like, well, this is not telling us why. So historians then had to become a lot more personal people and start asking individual questions and start to do that sort of qualitative kind of interview to work out, what were you doing? Why were you doing it? And it only came from the why, and it only came from that qual. And so now history, for like Christopher Browning and others, they merge the two. You have these statistics and these numbers. This is what happened. And why did it happen? Well, because I've taken this sort of personal approach and interviewed these men that had a role in it, and this will give us some insight. And I think that's, is that a recent phenomenon, DB, or is it? I think it's more recent, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a more recent phenomenon. Actually, this is what we call it post-positivism, post-behavioralism, what we call in political science. That's a more recent phenomenon. Actually, yeah, that's a good point, Kirill. Similar thing happened in political science as well. You know, in the 1940s, when there was this positivist boom in the US, especially in the US and in the West, political scientists, for example, were drawing on large-scale quantitative data about people's political participation and political behavior to predict political outcomes, you know. And one example is people were looking at the simple example is that political scientists started look at who turned out in the voting booth and who voted liberals and who voted conservatives in US. And based on that, large scale polling data, they started to predict which party is going to win, which party is popular, etc., just one example. And this is where the whole idea of comparative politics emerged. They started comparing those sort of data sets beyond the state and at an international level between different states. So this is where comparative politics came in. But then the post-positivists, critical scholars started to questions in the same manner as they did in history. They started to look at, yes, you can tell us who voted liberals and who voted labor, but you cannot tell us why black minorities voted this and the others not, right? What explains that variations? You need to really go and talk to the people. You need to have people's view about this, and then they started merging this data. And later on, even it just moved to more like quantitative, post-positivist, interpretivist research design, where for some even completely started abandoning this quantitative approach, So that's how it worked. Do people have any experience in doing that? Just a practical experience for the, you want to share with? Otherwise, I will move to the next part and do a group work.
We got a question from a participant. Just want to clarify, like a brief example, each of MMR approaches.
Yeah, okay, good question. Okay, let me see if my next slides helps to that. Otherwise, I'm happy to provide that that example. Ah, right. Okay. All right. I think let me stick to this slide to keep it simple and give an example. Okay. I already gave an example of the sequential method. Okay. For example, I was talking about the girls' dropout rates. If you want to study, what is the high school completion rates, or the question I'm talking about for research is, what is the high school completion rate of girls aged between this and this in a particular province? Then what you would think is that you might like to start with you want to do a quantitative survey to find out how many girls completed high schools, how many did not, etc., etc. But then that again, these numbers which you will get from survey will not tell us everything. It only tells us something, which is how many completed and how many did not. Okay, but then to understand why some girls who did not complete, why they did not continue their education, was it because of early marriage? Was it because of the household economy that they needed to go and work to earn livelihood for their family? Was it because of any other kinds of household carers job, something else? You might not be able to capture everything by quantitative survey. So to do that, what you can do is you start with a quantitative survey, you find certain pictures, and then you found that within age 15 to 20, say for example, you might find that between 18 and 20 there is a huge dropout rates, one finding for example. So you want to understand why the girls between 18 to 20 have high dropout rates. To understand that, you need to go and identify the sample size of the girls between that particular age bracket, and you go and do a qualitative study. So what you have done here is you started, the sequence is that you started with a quantitative study, and then you did, in the next phase, you conducted a qualitative study to get a fuller pictures of what happened or what happens to girls who are in high schools, and what drives school dropout rates. The congruent model of the same project may look a little bit different in terms of how we need to operationalize it. Okay, for example, in the congruent or integrated model, you do it simultaneously. You have done the literature review, you already find out some of the insights from other studies, and you have two different set of questions ready at the same time. It's merged, it's integrated. And then you collect data, and then you actually simultaneously analyze the data and come to a conclusion. Okay? The nested, again, you only want to do quantitative study, but you really want to find out one particular simple amount. Okay, for example, if you find like household inequality is one of the driving factor, you only want to do a small qualitative study of the inequality in the household, and then you just go and talk to a few people to find more about inequality. So you are not doing the whole qualitative studies simultaneously. Okay, so this is how, the same project, same mixed method research design, but in terms of methodology and operationalizing the design, it might look slightly different. Is that clear?
Yes, that is. Thank you so much.
Yeah, okay. Do people have any other question? If not, how are we going in terms of time? We have just half an hour to go. Is that right? Okay.
Yes.
If you don't have any questions, if it is clearer so far, we would like you to do a group exercise. So I think we have, how many we have altogether in this group? So,
So 31 altogether here. So it's
yeah,
about 27 participants. Yeah.
27 participants. So I think 6, 7 participants, one group. So can we have 4 different groups to have a small group work? And in the group work, oh, is it? Why is it not showing? Oh, hang on. Moani, can you see the slide?
Yes, but it's not on the full screen. Yeah.
Ah. How about now?
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, good. Okay. So the exercise here is, we would like you to reflect on what we just discussed in this session. In a group, I think like everyone has a project in their mind to work through the training sessions. Is that correct? Or at least some people have their projects in mind, even if it's a vague idea, not very crystallized idea as of now. But I'm sure people have some projects in mind. Is that correct?
I think so.
Yeah, okay, good.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, then in your group, just go and reflect on the research problem and research question. It doesn't have to be a final crystallized, fine-tuned research questions at this stage. But looking at your research puzzle and research questions, just discuss like what kind of research design would be useful to your projects and why. And if you think that the mixed method research design is useful, then we would like you to discuss what kind of strategy, of the 3 strategies we just discussed, which particular strategy would be suitable to your projects and why. So all we want you to think through in your discussions is the justification, the rationale, because a good research proposal, and this is what we want, one of the I think the final product at the end of these training sessions is that you will be able to write a good research proposal. So for a good research proposal, a well-defined, philosophically grounded and logical feasible research design is a core. It's an absolutely important building block of a good research proposal. So when you think of this different design and method, what you really need to have is a justification, is a rationale, why you want to do this and how you want to do this. So we want you to focus on those 2 things based on your own project. Can we have another maximum 15 minutes to do that discussion? And then each group comes back and then shares your views with others. How does that sound to people? Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
And
Thank you, Moani. This is clear.
Also nominate someone to present as a summary at the end of the session, please. Yeah.
Yeah, please do that. Thank you. Thank you, Moani. So I think we need to divide people into different groups. How do we normally do it, Moani? Randomly, or do we assign them?
Yeah, it's randomly. I can do it, DB.
Yeah, please. Thank you.
4 rooms or 5 rooms? 5 rooms?
Let's make it 4 so that it becomes easy for people to, yeah?
Yeah.
I think we will have 7 people, up to 7 people in each group. Would that be okay? I'm happy to have 5 rooms as well if you want to have a smaller group, but then we need more time to reporting back in the plenary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just made it 4 rooms now.
Okay, good.
Yeah, open all rooms. Yeah, participants can join.
Excellent. Thank you, Moani. Yeah. Yeah, good. Technology makes things easier, isn't it? People are coming back from group discussion. That's good. Is everyone back? So we can start the
Yeah, everyone is here.
conversations because we only have 10 minutes. Great. Thank you, everyone. So I hope you had a good, productive discussions in your group. And I hope you have also nominated someone to share on behalf of the group. So when you share your reflections, I would be grateful if you could also share how did you find this like exercise, whether or not group exercise was helpful. Just a quick comment on that would be great. So which group wants to go first? Okay, I mean, you can volunteer. So we don't know who is the group leader, so please feel free to come in. Yeah. We didn't name the group, so did we name the group? No, we didn't. So we don't know which one to call first. So it's up to you guys. So please go ahead.
Yeah, someone suggests numerical order would be faster. So group 1, 2, 3, 4, or 4, 3, 2, 1. It's up to you.
Okay, let's just start from 4. Why not start from 4? So group 4, yes.
Bong Mini.
Oh,
Group 4 is our group.
Oh, okay. Could you hear me? Sorry.
yes, I can hear you. Thank you.
Because maybe my speaker is not so good. Actually, I represent group 4. Actually, I'm still in the stage of trying to finalize my research question. But I would like to share a bit because I try to to do the research proposal related to health risk for elderly people in Cambodia, a big. So I just would like to know how the system level, like to assess system level related to like assess availability, accessibility, and also the responsiveness of the current health system. Because in Cambodia, at the moment we do not have really like comprehensive or maybe wide health system to support the like caretaker for the elderly people. Actually, we have just some for the private sector, but not really in the system like in the public at the moment. And usually elderly people depends on like the family caregiving. So for the question, as I mentioned earlier, like we would like to know the elderly space for the availability at the different level of Cambodia, maybe at the health system. Usually, like just would like to compare between like urban area and rural area. We just choose some of the province because to be not too big for the research and also related to how the elderly people access and also afford to the services. And usually at the private sector, it's quite expensive at the moment, and maybe not able to afford for all. And we also related to like do to understand the like system level challenges to deliver this kind of health for elderly people, especially like I mean the caregiving. So the methodology at the moment just would like to use convergent like mixed method. But still thinking about doing like kind of survey first, and then we will do some of following the qualitative interview, especially for those who are like in-depth interview to the key people, like people who have the like policy decision, and also maybe at the kind of providing the current health service and so on. And so people who already have experience with the using the health service, and people who have not yet but thinking about maybe want to use the service and so on. And I think approaching to both methods at the same time, usually maybe we try to think for which kind of question that we need to involve, like kind of one, and making sure that I need to involve that just qual or something like that. Yes. And
Okay.
maybe I'm at this stage, and please give me like comment, and also if you would like to have any question, please.
Yeah, it's good. Thank you for sharing that. It's a bit of cutting off, so I missed, because of the internet connections. I think I missed some part of your comments, but what I understand from this is that you are considering to apply a convergent integrated methods, mixed method approach, which sounds reasonable, logical. One thing I actually forgot to tell everyone about this mixed method approach is that it is always recommended, if you are considering to apply mixed method research, it is recommended to think of a couple of research questions. Your research as one overarching research questions or objective. Then you can also have unpack, deconstruct that research questions into a couple of sub research questions. So when you do that, if you're going to use like integrated convergent mixed method research design, then you might like to think of at least one question that touches on, that is relevant to qualitative side of your inquiry. And you can also think of a research questions that looks like a bit quantitative. To get more ideas about that, I would recommend you to read the pre-reading for this week. It gives you some good example of that, how you can actually think of, tweak the research questions that actually suit your mixed method research design. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Any other? Who's next? Group 3. Have you finished your discussion?
Can I go? But I don't know what group we are.
Okay, sure, please.
Rana, I'm not sure from what group we are, but we did discuss, but we didn't finish the whole question. But I think my team have been providing very good information and feedback for me to think about the project that I'm thinking to do. So I'm a psychologist, so I want to explore on one of the project research that I want to do is I want to see how does the emotional availability of the parent, both mother and father, in a traditional parenting in Cambodia affect their children's ability to express and manage their emotions. So that's where my research that I want to explore. And the hypothesis that I want to explore in this research is really about how children in Cambodian family, where one parent, typically the father, is less emotionally involved due to the traditional gender role expectation, and mom is more these children who grown up in this environment more likely to experience emotional development challenges, such as difficult expressing their emotion, low self-esteem, or increased anxiety. So that's where my hypothesis is that if the father don't emotionally available to their kid, it can impact like that to their kids.
So you're thinking, sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Go ahead.
No. You go ahead. Have you finished? No.
Not yet. So
Okay.
the part where we discuss is they help me to narrow down the question, research, and all of that. They also, because I'm thinking to do qualitative because I want to understand the experience and perception and the context where that's what I'm toward to. But one of the group member, they also suggesting me that it would be also even more meaningful if I can include like quantitative is about the inequality in parenting between the gender in the family. It's like mom and dad, like the inequality in parenting involvements in Cambodian family. So I would think, because I never thought about it, but I think that would be also helping a lot with, how much and what percentage that from father and mother engage in parenting in Cambodian culture. And then it would see how the impact, to the children in the family.
Mm.
So that would be my take from our discussion. So yeah, but we haven't talked about how to collect data, what is the limitation. I haven't
Yeah.
there yet. Yeah.
Look, no, that's fine. Look, I mean, I know there's 10, 15 minutes is not enough time to do all these things, and you can always start, keep on building on that. But I'm glad at least you have some clarity on your research objectives and research questions. Look, I only have one very quick suggestion. It's not a comment. What you are thinking sounds like fascinating project, and good luck with that. Of course, your research questions could be narrowed down, but if you are not going to use quantitative method, then be careful. Don't call it hypothesis. Okay. Hypothesis is a term only used in quantitative research. Once you have a hypothesis, you test it by inferential techniques. Okay. If you are doing qualitative research, then instead of hypothesis, you could call it theoretical propositions. We call them propositions. So you can have proposition 1, proposition 2. One proposition, what you are saying could be that children who are who grow with single parents or whatever has difficulties to manage emotions, etc., etc. That can be your proposition 1, and you could have 2, 3 different propositions, and collect data to provide an interpretation, narrations, and analysis against those propositions. Okay, so don't call them hypotheses if it's not quantitative study.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Group 2, please, very quickly.
Hello, I can share some of our discussion, even though we did not fully complete. So our main question is, how does women participation in decision making affect the implementation of climate change resistant strategy in Cambodia? And we
Wow,
have discussed
interesting.
that we will be choosing the mixed method. So we will be using the nested method, which means that we will mainly depend on the qualitative to understand explanation about the issue, and also we will use quantitative to find out the correlation as well as the trend. And regarding the method that we're gonna use for qualitative, we're gonna do like the review of document, report, available, and also we're gonna do key informant interview and focus group discussion. And quantitative, we're gonna use surveys. So regarding the methodological philosophy, we're gonna use positivist, which means that we will say that women participation in decision making will positively affect the implementation of climate change resistant strategy in Cambodia. And regarding the limitation, we did not reach to that part yet.
Okay, that's fine. Fair enough. We asked too many questions as well. But good. Look, we really wanted you to start this thinking, along those research design lines for your project. And your project sounds fascinating, interesting. I only have minor comments, suggestions is that what you just talked about, I think it's not just positivist philosophy, because what you are trying to do is also trying to collect qualitative data and interpret, tell the story, interpret findings. So it's not entirely positivist in that sense. You are also employing post-positivist descriptive interpretive method. Okay, so just be clear about that. All right, thank you again, and let's go to finally group 1.
So for our group, we have already discussed parts of the question so far, and basically we have raised on the research that I am doing in my job right now related to so the research question that we have is related to my current research on the ethics solution that are currently being implemented in Cambodia to address inclusive education. So for that research, we are utilizing mixed method research in a sequential design. So initially we will do qualitative research before we utilize quantitative research to complement the qualitative data that we will have. And for the plan on the research, we have the hypothesis that edtech solutions in Cambodia exist for promoting inclusive educations among the Cambodian population, but that there are still major gaps remain in accessibility to those tools and even to education itself. For the tool that we will use for the research, since it is a mixed method research, first we will start with a key informant interview with relevant stakeholders, and then for the quantitative we will use surveys with other stakeholders and schools that use those ethics solutions. These are all that we have from it so far.
Sounds good. Look, thank you. I think what I understand from this is you can also, if you want to do qualitative first, and then you go on to the next stage, then sounds to me that it's a sequential design. So you want to do qualitative and qualitative research. You can find some emergent recurrent themes from your qualitative study, and then you might like to find some quantitative data around those recurrent themes. Okay, that's probably one way to go about it. But thanks, and I hope you all like the group exercise and the discussions you had. Just to give you a sense of next week's sessions, I earlier, if you remember what I said, is that these three, qualitative, quantitative, and mixed method research designs are most common ones. But then as part of these different research designs, there are now many innovative data collection methods, which sometimes can tell you powerful stories from the field. Okay, and you should be aware of those. One example is photo elicitation method. So you read the photos, pictures in a particular context and give a meaning to that, considering so many other factors. Nicole, our colleague Nicole, this is another mastermind behind this training, is an expert on that. So Nicole will lead that session next week. So you might actually, after the end of next week's sessions, you might like to combine the creative, innovative methods to the existing mixed method research we have discussed today, right? So that's how it gives you more ideas about what kind of approach and design and methods to adopt for your project. It's already 10 minutes past. Sorry, we take a little bit more time. There was a lot of ground to cover in these sessions. If you have any questions, feel free to ask very quickly, and Kirill and I'll be happy to answer. If not, if you have any other questions, feel free to send emails as well if you like to. Otherwise, I must thank you. Thank everyone. And Kirill, do you have anything to add? You want to say like?
No, just to say we'll see you next week, DB.
Yeah. Kim-san? Over to you, Kim-san. Okay. All right.
Yep. Thank you. I don't have much to say now. Thank you for sticking with us. We are past 10 minutes now, and I just look forward to see you all again next Friday, and I will give you update information about our preparation for the next sessions around Monday or Tuesday after our trainer provide.
Thank you.
Preparation.
Great. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Kim-san.
Have a
Thank you,
nice
everyone.
weekend, everyone.
All right. Same to you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.